Marni Battista. Really love talking to Marni. So much energy, so much passion in what she does. Do you know what soul mapping is? I wonder. I open up with that question. Marni knows. I do ask if you need to take the soul train to get there. But it's a great conversation with Marni. She had a traumatic accident in 2020, broke her back skiing, had a business then, healed, decided to go in an RV with her husband, or, she was empty nest, and she became big difference between simplifying and minimalizing, by the way. I asked if she was a minimalist, and she said, not really, but she simplifies. I wonder if you know what the difference is. I certainly didn't. But we talk about now what she does. She generally coaches women midlife with, soul mapping, with dating, whatever it needs for them to get out of wherever they may be stuck. She wrote a great book on the 7 questions for living a meaningful life. But it's just, we talk about burnout. We talk about so many things about the concept of your shopping cart. Are you living a backed up life? Fascinating perspective from Marni, and her take on discipline is so unique. I've never heard it before. Never, ever heard it before. By the way, the 7 questions, living a meaningful life. Did you seek wisdom was number 1. I wonder if you know the rest. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Marni Battista, thank you so much for your time today. I'm very excited to talk to you. What is soul mapping? And do you need to take the soul train to get there?
I love that. So soul mapping is a process by which you discover what is the map, right? The navigational direction to live a life where your soul is fully expressed in every single aspect of your life. And most people are conditioned to choose things, people, jobs, places to live, friends to have through ego and pre-programmed shoulds rather than what's really truly an expression of who they are. So the soul map allows you to uncover that and then start creating your life from that place.
So how is that? It sounds like there's a lot of hard questions there.
Well, there's not, believe it or not. There's 3 pieces to figuring this out. When I work with clients, basically what we do is and anyone can do this at home, right? So if you think yourself, let's just use you an example. Normally what I would do is I have people track for about 14 days, every single thing they do every day. And they sort of evaluate it without judgment on, is this something that I'm energetically engaged in and I feel like I'm on flow? Like a scale from 1 to 5. So you do that for 14 days. And then what you do is you kind of look at the data. Now, I'm going to tell you what those 3 things are in a minute, but I want you to understand where this comes from. So one of the inspirations for this process comes from the design thinking model, which was created at Stanford University. They're one of the preeminent founders of this model, and most high-level consulting groups use this to design products, right? So the first phase of product design is what they call the empathy phase. So the empathy phase means you get to know the user of the product. So if we're going to design a product, which is your life fully expressed, that you freaking love, then we actually need to know the user. And most of us don't have an updated user
Mm.
profile,
Hmm.
right? So we're designing our lives from our intellect, from what our parents told us we should do, from what we think will impress other people. There's so many pieces we can talk about. So when you start to track what you're doing and you look at your energy, engagement, and flow after 14 days, you can start to see some patterns around things that feel easy and effortless versus those things that feel very challenging and very forced and very unaligned, like they're hard, like you have to do it.
Hmm.
And then once you look at that, then you can ask these three questions and you start to see the patterns that will be the formation of your soul map.
Now, when you say log everything you do, how detailed is that?
It's super detailed. So let's
Really?
can we play along using you
Please.
as an example? Okay. So let's just take this morning. We're recording this in the afternoon on a
Yes.
weekday. Okay. So tell me, and I'll make some notes. Starting from like the minute you woke up, like what are
Yes.
the things that you did today?
Lots of excitement.
Okay.
I'm kidding, of course. What did I do? I got up and I went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I talked to my partner. How detailed, like what we
Very
talked about?
detailed. Yeah. So we had a conversation around, was it like the bills that we have to pay that are due next week?
Really?
Was it like we had a conversation about our plans for tonight? Was it a conversation about like, here's the errands you have to run? Like, what was it about?
She hasn't been feeling well. She's feeling better now. What are the plans for today? What time you think you'll be back? Just
Logistics.
yeah, logistics, I
Okay,
guess.
so
Yeah.
logistics. Okay, so let's just sort of make a note about that. And then tell me something else that you did. We'll just do like the first 2 hours.
Then I just started working. So I just checked all my messages, checked all my email. I completed a few tasks, started planning the day. So I guess I just worked for the rest of the time.
Okay,
Well,
so
it took
what
I
you
took
would
a
yeah.
shower.
Yeah, so what you'd wanna do is you'd wanna look at, like, so I checked my emails, and most people would be like, "Okay, I did that from, like, 9 to 9:20," or some
Mm.
people, when I do this, they do that in bed. They wake up in the morning and they're checking
Ah.
their emails from, 9 to 9:20. Some people are meditating, some people get up right away, they have their coffee ritual. They might feel like they're at a 5. Like, I love that. I go in and I just feel relaxed and I get my
Mm.
coffee and maybe I
Mm.
sit out on the deck, right? Whereas someone else might wake up at like 8:47. They work from home on this day and their meeting's at 9,
Mm.
right? And they're like rushing in the bathroom. They're brushing their teeth. Their engagement is like a 1. Their energy is a 1. They're like, this just sucks. Then they
Mm.
get into that meeting and they feel like distracted. They feel tired. They feel right. So this is really detailed. And then what you do is you start to look at like what are the patterns. And I'm going to use cooking as an example because it's from my own story that I think a lot of people resonate with. So when I was doing this, I have a lot of opportunities in my day to cook, right? Whether I'm cooking lunch for myself or for my
Me
family or
too.
with my husband. And there were times when I looked at cooking and it was literally a 1. I was like, freaking hate this. Like,
Hmm.
no energy, no engagement. There were times when it was a 5. So when I started to look over the data over 14 days, I saw a really interesting pattern. When I'm cooking and my husband came home from work and he's on his phone and I'm trying to talk to him about the day, but he's like on his computer and he just looks up and goes like, "When are we eating?" It was
Mm.
a 1. When I have some friends over for a dinner party on a Friday and maybe there's a game on and everyone's in the kitchen and we're talking and they're just offering to help, but I might even be doing most of the cooking, it was like a 5.
Hmm.
And so I was like, huh. So when I go and I look at those 3 questions, I'm like, oh, so what I like to do, that's one of the questions. One of the things is cook. How I like to do it is in groups where it's collaborative, when there's
Mm.
engagement.
Mm.
And the why or my core motivation is because I feel like I'm nurturing and I'm in connection with people.
Hmm.
Okay. So then what we would start to have in the very beginning stage of my soul map is like an expression of my essential self, of my authentic self, my deepest self, my soul is cooking. There's so many things about it that it turns out
Mm,
like it's creative when
mm,
it's a five. It's collaborative when it's a five. There's engagement when there's a five. There's appreciation when there's a five.
mm,
Right. And so now when I look at, okay, we all have to cook, right? Like, how can I start doing it? How can I set my life up so that when I'm doing that, I literally feel like I'm on a five?
hmm.
And we want to create this map so that we can start to design and make choices and adjustments that our life literally feels like this is just me being me. It feels like my life is a five.
Wow. Fascinating. And so you take, I mean, I love to cook too, by the way, but many of those same reasons you gave. And also, by the way, as a side note, I like the fact that I walk into the kitchen and it's clean, and then I take everything out and I, make a mess and we eat and then I put everything back away. I never get to see a project from start to finish in my business, but in cooking I do. So perhaps it's just that sense of completion I like as well.
Yeah, right? Like completion, beginning, finishing, that's a huge thing. So then you look at like, so how do I set up tasks
Mm,
in my day where and that's a great example because this is something that I've been working on in myself in the last like year and a half or so is um reorganizing my entire week so that I get to finish stuff. Because
mm,
otherwise I was doing a little thing, then I had to go do that, then I checked some email, right? And I felt like I didn't get that same sort of like completion energy. So I started to adjust my meeting schedule, what days I do certain things, what days I do other things, so that I could have time to actually follow things through to completion.
hmm.
And so once you get this, you can't believe how many things you can do to optimize so that your life is a reflection of your soul map because there's only one you, literally. You're the one. So, and we set our lives up based on things we see on Instagram, what our parents did, how our partner does it, um, and or our boss wants us to do it even sometimes, right?
Mm.
And we're mostly like unengaged and unhappy in our lives.
So Marnie, we go through this exercise of soul mapping to discover the true loves and passions in our life.
Yes.
And once discovered, it's easier, it's less difficult to navigate in how you want to live your life because you truly understand what makes you, what motivates you.
Exactly, and I've had clients do this in jobs that they literally hated. They're like,
Mm,
"Get me out of here. When can I retire? I need a
mm,
new job." Like, they're in that really place of deep pain around it, and when we do this soul map, I had one client, Alexandria, who was like, "Oh my god, no wonder I loathe my job right now. Literally,
mm,
all these things that are my soul map are not in my job."
mm,
And so she went to her boss and she was like, "Look, here's some things that aren't happening right now. This is what I need. This is how I need to arrange things. This is what I need more of. This is what I need less of." And she had been in a place of feeling really disempowered with her boss. In fact, she once told me, like, if I say anything to my boss, there's like a chopping block and I'll just get moved up to the top.
mm.
So when she had this soul map, she had this confidence and she had a different energy around her conversation. Her boss was like, "Oh God, you're not thinking of leaving, are you?" And she said,
Wow.
"Well, I'm not thinking about it." And her boss was like, "Okay, what do we need to shift? What do we need to change?"
Mm.
So a lot of it, 50% was on her plate, 50% was on her boss's plate. And they started to really change things. And now she
Hmm.
feels empowered in her job. She doesn't hate it. And she's like, actually, I'm putting the resume away. Like I'm loving it right now.
Wow. Now, what happens, Marnie, throughout the months, throughout the quarters? You start to discover new things, new passions. How often do you have to do the exercise?
Well, I did this for the first time, I wanna say in, like, 2021. I was in a place of, deep contemplation. I was feeling very unsatisfied. I'd worked really hard in my business. I built it up to look like what I thought was supposed to make me happy. My kids were leaving the nest. Like, there was a lot of transitions, and I felt like I've worked so hard to have this, and I feel very unsatisfied. And so this was really the beginning of the journey. So one of the other things I do in figuring out your soul map is I look back at peak experiences in your life,
Hmm.
work, personal, health, well-being, legacy, money, right? And so my husband and I were doing this process together, and we were sitting there having our coffee on the kitchen counter, all their little notebooks spread around. And I said, look at our peak experiences over the last 5 years. Why are we only doing what like blows our hair back on vacation?
Hmm.
And he was like, well, yeah, that's why I want to move. And I was
Hmm.
afraid to move. And that I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Part of what's making me unsatisfied is my business is not on my terms. I'm just following what I think is supposed to create success and make me happy. I have this giant team that isn't uh, allowing me to do what I love to do, which is coach. I'm just managing people. Um,
Hmm.
I'm only really being in nature when I go on a trip or I decide to suck it up and, beat the freeway and like go hike before like 10:30 in the morning, and struggle to find a parking spot. And that was the beginning of me selling my house, putting everything on storage, and deciding to live in an RV for a year and travel around the country to
Yeah.
figure out more about what blows my hair back. Right. So when I did this again, actually just last fall, I was like, there's this, but now there's also this, because
Hmm.
if I track my energy and engagement for 14 days, I'm doing very different things than I was doing like 3 years ago.
Yeah. So before we get to the RV, so 2020 ski accident.
Yes.
You hurt your back. You're in a bed. It's COVID. I mean, it's just a time. It's a
It
horrible
was a
time
dark
for.
time.
Yeah, it was a dark time. Is this where you decided to make a big change? Because you started
Well,
that business after that.
I had the business. The business was
Ah,
going for like 15, 12 years by that
ah,
time. I had built this business. I had the ski accident. It was before COVID. There's nothing more annoying than being bedridden and people telling you you're lucky because at least it's
mm,
lockdown.
mm,
I was like,
mm,
I still don't feel lucky.
mm,
I feel lucky to be alive. So that was when I really realized that I couldn't do anything. Literally, I couldn't even like read. I couldn't sit up in bed enough to read or hold the Kindle hurt or a book.
mm,
I couldn't type. I couldn't write. I love to write. Working, I was very challenging. I remember just being propped up like in a pillow and trying to like be on Zoom for like 5 minutes, enough to like
mm,
smile and get it done. And I had this realization: if I'm not doing, then what am I?
mm,
And I was like, I don't actually know.
hmm,
And I had this realization that I broke my sacrum, which is like in certain beliefs and ways of thinking would be like the area of creation, the foundation of our physical self. And I had these 7 cracks in the foundation.
wow.
And what I realized was the foundation on which I had built the house for like 50 some years had cracks in it. And it was the
Hmm,
roof was leaking, the windows were rattling, everything was falling apart. And that was when I thought, okay, I have to figure this out. And everything I was doing to get better wasn't working. Right? Like I was trying all this stuff. I mean, I was to a point where I was like Googling, like, when we get desperate and we start Googling stuff and clicking on like webinars and infomercials, and you're like,
right.
maybe I should buy it. Like I went to quack doctors, I did everything. Um,
Wow.
and so I wasn't asking the right questions. I was doing, not being. I needed to rebuild everything from the heart, from the soul out. Rather, I built my life from my neck up.
Hmm. So you have this epiphany with your husband. You go in an RV. How long did your RV and what are the lessons learned there?
Oh my gosh. Well, we did it for almost a year.
Wow.
So the lessons I learned were really big. One was that I was more capable than I thought I was.
Mm,
Number two was just because somebody else's experience, or I kept doing it.
hmm,
Like, oh, well, this is how other couples RV. This is how we should RV.
hmm,
I was like, wait a minute. I'm just listening to, I'm YouTubing, I'm doing it
Mm, mm,
again, except
mm,
I'm not
mm.
following my heart. So I had to figure that out. One of the biggest lessons that I learned, and I talk about this in my book that I have coming out at the beginning of next year, which is I was hiking. It was at the beginning. It had rained for like the first like 5 weeks. So
Wow.
imagine this. You're like, yeah, like life on the road. I got my 2 cats, my husband. And we just start driving. It's raining. We don't know what we're doing. There's a lot of bickering. And we go on this hike, and it's a hike that's part of it's in Kentucky, and you go on this hike, and it's part of the Appalachian Trail. And when you get to this one point, it's called the Newfound Gap. You look over on one side and you see Tennessee. On the other side, I believe is North Carolina, and you're like literally in the middle of the two states. And my husband was like walking ahead of me. I was like, oh no, like in my fantasy, we like walk side by side and we have deep conversations together. And he was like, getting up the hill. And I was like, look at the flowers, having my own experience, kind of in the rain, drizzling. And I get to the top and I realize that I am what now I've called the newfound gap, which means that when you make a change, when you are in a transition, it's very easy to compare your old life to what you think your new life is going to be.
Mm,
And there will be times where it will fall short because it's not going to be, and it's new, and you're in transition, you're in change, and you're learning a whole new set of things about yourself and life. That's why I created the Radical Living Challenge. And so I was like, oh crap, if I'm really going to do this, I have to be in one state. I have to like really let go of my old life and really be in the life that I have, and that it is messy, and that I'm going to have to keep choosing to look forward, not look back.
mm,
Um, and one of my favorite country singers, Jelly Roll, said this thing about like, that's why your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror,
mm.
right? Because that's what's in front of you. And if you keep looking in that rear view mirror, you're always going to be filled with doubt and regret. So that was like a very big turning point on the road where I was like, all right, it's time to really commit to my soul and to this journey and to stop kvetching about what I left behind.
Hmm. And you describe it as you started, like, in a van with your husband and figured some things out, and then you moved to a bigger one, and you moved down, but it you did make another pivot kind of minimalism, correct?
Well, you have to sort of do that,
Yeah,
right? By virtue of like 4,000 square feet to
right,
400 square feet. That's with the slide
right.
outs. Um,
Hmm.
and I did. And so that was it. That's been a whole other journey on simplicity is not minimalism.
What's the difference?
Simplicity is what feels simple and really resonant with your soul. I feel like
Hmm.
minimalism is just getting rid of stuff
Mm,
because you're trying to uh, take things out of your life.
mm,
And so being focused on simplicity required a lot more thought and uh, questioning around what I really care about and what do I need to do to fulfill that soul map.
mm,
So here's my example is I work out, right? And so I need to work out. When I went on the forums looking at like how people work out when they live in an RV. There was a lot of sassy comments about like, go hiking, be in nature. What do you need equipment for? Like very sassy, right? And I was like, okay, wait, no, this is how I express myself in this way is my well being. And so I ended up bringing my Peloton in the RV. That was not simple by any means, like in the
mm,
traditional sense, right?
mm,
We had to get rid of a chair. My husband had to carry this 60-pound thing
mm,
inside of it. Every time we packed up, we had to like make sure it didn't fall down. Parts gotten broken and FedEx chasing us across the
mm.
country to deliver a part. But to me, it made working out simple, right? No matter, even when it was raining, no matter what it was, I could get
Right.
on that bike and I could do my thing. So all the things, in the whole house that I wanted to bring, that was really, really important.
Hmm.
Um, I brought stuff to do charcuterie boards. We were just talking about cooking. I got a little container and I wrapped all my cute little beautiful dishes and bowls in paper and I put them in a thing and that had space, very small space in the RV. Um, certain kitchen implements, like I clothes. My gosh. Now I joke about like when I walk into someone else's closet, I'm like, what the hell do you need with all these clothes? So I got rid of a lot of clothes. So even in the RV, post RV, I've really, really honed in on what is simplicity, but it's not minimalism. Minimalism is easy. You
Mm.
just get rid of shit. That's not what it's
Right.
about.
Very interesting. And do you continue to simplify your life even now?
Yes, I do. And that's so part of my whole process is experimenting, right? So everything I do is an experiment. And when you do an experiment, you don't just say, do I like it or not? Right? Like so taking a 2-week trip in a Sprinter van. Did I like it or did I not? No,
Hmm.
there's a lot of questions you want to ask because you're testing certain things, right? See if it blows your hair back. So my husband and I ended up selling the RV after a year, and then we decided to hang out in Colorado in this town. We rented a house, and one of the things we were testing was that we needed to be close to town. Like we wanted to walk around, that was a whole vibe that we thought this is what will blow our hair back. So we did that, and we were in this house, it had a certain amount of space. But there's a lot of things around it that weren't really working, that were complicated, that wasn't simple
Hmm.
because it was sort of out of date. Not out of date in that I need fancy stuff, but out of date in that a lot of things just didn't work. That made it hard to do some basic things.
Hmm.
Fair enough. Okay. So then we're like, well, maybe we don't need to live in town. Maybe we want to be more in nature. And maybe we don't need all this space. And maybe we can actually downsize our space. And so we moved out to the country. We lived about 10 or 15 minutes out of town in a little cabin. And I was like, okay, I'm simplifying. Less bedrooms, less cleaning, less cups, less dishes, everything. Um, and what I learned after 8 months there was like, this is not simplifying.
Hmm.
Right?
Why?
Because so I love to entertain and I love to host and I love to have friends and family coming. So we got this little tiny cabin. It
Ah.
had 2 bedrooms and one bathroom and like a half bath. So I figured out how to get a bunk bed and a double bed in this one guest room. And every time we had people come, we'd be like, I hope you guys like each other because you're all staying
Mhm.
in one room.
Mhm.
My office, I had my Peloton. So my little exercise situation was in my office. I also shared the office with the litter box.
Hmm.
That was not simple.
Interesting.
Yeah. And uh, it was
Hmm.
very outdated. There was like heating. There's a lot of, it was gorgeous. I loved being in nature. I loved being in and not seeing any cars. I loved so many things about it. Um, but that was really interesting because what I learned was um, there's a certain I need a certain amount of space to really be in my essential self needs space,
Hmm.
spaciousness in
Hmm.
my schedule, in my house. I need an office. It's really great now. We just moved. I have a space to work out. The cat has his own little place for
Ah.
his little broth. Um, uh, and there's just room, like there's just room. Even my husband, we have some extra bedrooms, so my husband can have his own bathroom. It's easy.
Hmm.
Now, not everyone has the same soul map. So what one person cares about and one person cares about is going to be very, very different. But you don't know what you don't know. And what I want to talk about this process is you might just say, well, my vision is I have this big house and I overlook the ocean and I drive this kind of car and I do this and I wear these kinds of clothes because that's what society tells you success would look like.
Hmm.
But you might not need or care about any of those things. And you
Hmm.
only know by actually doing this work and experimenting and actually intentionally designing. And most people only think about what they think would make them happy.
There is a lot of pressure to kind of succumb to to outside forces like that, isn't it? Another you have a great quote. You have great social media, Marnie,
Oh,
and
thank you.
you do it yourself. And the opposite of what we're talking about, simplifying, of course, maybe not the opposite, but almost related, is just burnout. The price of relentless hustle is the quote you have up,
Yeah.
and you talk about burnout and overwhelm and how to avoid.
Well, so the flip side, yeah. So I think men, but I work mostly with women. I think
Yeah,
that most women are trained up to live their life according to this little acronym I have. It started out as FOG, which was fear, obligation, and guilt. But then I realized that sometimes the fog is so thick, it's like pea soup. Have you ever heard of that? Like the fog is so thick, it's like, right?
sure.
Because I added the P because the other thing is proving energy. Women feel like they have to prove themselves,
Hmm.
to prove themselves at work, prove themselves that they're youthful, that they're skinny, that they're smart, we're just running around. I mean, I was running around trying to prove that I was enough through all these things that I was doing and creating. Um, and we do that through our work, our kids, our partner, like I
Hmm.
believe we is me. And so as women, so we grow up, we're like fear, obligation, guilt, proving. That's
Hmm.
exhausting. I think when you're younger, you can power through it. But the women that I work with that are like in there getting to 40 or over are sort of like, dude, I don't think I can keep doing this.
Hmm.
Like it's relentless. I don't have it in me anymore. That's terrifying. That's is what makes some women fantasize about their Thelma and Louise moment. You just
Hmm.
get in the car and you're like that,
Sure.
or I'm selling it all and I'm moving to Bali. I'm giving it up. I'm quitting. That's not what this is about. This is about a wake up call that you are living a life based on so many things that are part of ego that are not who you really are. And that if we can sort of get rid of all that crap, then your prefrontal cortex, your brain, your heart, your body, your spirit can come together and start to follow this soul map and then actually create a life that you love. And you may
Hmm.
not change as many things as you want, but when you stop having to prove, when you stop doing everything out of fear, out of obligation, out of guilt, your whole energy changes. So I
Hmm.
really encourage people, don't say like, ugh, I hate this, or maybe I need a new thing. Maybe it's the how you do it and the why you do it that needs to change.
Hmm. Why, Marnie? Why do you feel there's more pressure for women with fog?
Because I think that we grow up, well, especially, my generation, where you get a cookie if you perform well,
Hmm.
like, and then we learn that our emotions are not assets. We get trained that they're a pain in the ass,
Hmm.
right? And so we're like, there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying like there's no emotions, and we see sometimes I even do this. I'll be like, gosh, if I was a guy, I bet I wouldn't really care about like firing this person or having this difficult call. I fantasize that it would be easier,
Wow.
right? Yeah. And so we learn to like cover up our emotions. We become martyrs. We start to get rewards for the harder we work, right? You're like at
Hmm.
school and they're like, look at Susie. She's like got straight A's. Look, she got into Harvard. Oh, look, she got her PhD. Oh, look, she graduated cum laude. Oh my God. Like, look, our boyfriend is rich. Oh, look, her kids got into Harvard, right? Oh my God, it's exhausting.
Hmm.
And so because that emotional self gets squished, we build our lives on this very unstable foundation. Did you ever watch Survivor?
Yes.
Did you watch it last season?
No.
Oh, there was this character named Liz, and she has a moment. She's hungry. If you ever watch Survivor, right? They're out there 26 days, no food,
No.
trying to win $1 million. Anyway, and this girl is gluten free and all these things free, and they win this reward to go get this one food. I think it's at Applebee's, and she doesn't get picked to go eat the food. And it's epic because she literally loses her shit. She stands out there in front of her competitors and she's like, "Hi, so sick." I mean, she literally loses her shit. And while social media and everyone was like, "Whoa, rein it in." Honestly, I think that most women would do that if they could.
Wow.
If they had the space to just let it out, there's a lot of shit buried inside and we need
Hmm.
to like emotionally like relieve ourselves from that and clear out the space so that we can find joy. Because when you've got all that anger and resentment built up over decades, no wonder you're tired.
Hmm. And does this accumulate with you bring up the analogy of the shopping cart, in your
Yes.
life?
Yes. Yeah. So the shopping cart I love this metaphor. So basically, imagine you go through life, you come in, your shopping cart's empty, the Costco of life.
Yeah.
Right? And you go in there and you start to put things in your shopping cart that are attached to your ego and your identity that you feel equals success. So you're like, I drive a Mercedes. I went to Harvard. I got a straight A. I work at Coke. I'm a senior director. I'm skinny. I have no wrinkles. Like you name it. It's in our shopping cart, right? Now, here's the thing. The shopping cart in itself isn't bad. What happens is we believe we are the shopping cart,
Hmm.
right? Like that our worth and our I amness is all dependent on that shopping cart. I argue that you are not your shopping cart. You're just pushing the shopping cart. You're just this
Mm.
consciousness soul that is putting stuff in, thinking that it is you. But the truth is, you are not what you do. You're
Hmm.
not. Most of us believe that we are. So when I work with people, I'm like, let's simplify your shopping cart. Let's go in there and sort of take stuff out and start to look at it and really decide what we want to put in there, knowing that always we are not our shopping cart. We are not our feelings. We're just having feelings, right? We're
Mm.
just this being. And so it's a really beautiful way to think about like your ego, right? Your identity is what's in that shopping cart. We want to just make sure that we don't think that our shopping cart defines our enoughness. And we want to start to put things in there that are actually aligned because again, the shopping cart isn't bad, right? Like I used to have in my shopping cart um, big SUVs, fancy
Really?
SUVs. Yeah, because I lived in LA and I had the van for a while. I had 3 kids, at the
Mm.
time, and I liked my shopping cart, my van, because it was like I just was like I'm a dorky mom and I'm down with it, right? But then I was like single and divorced, and I was like, oh no, I need like a cool SUV that's in my shopping cart. And then I was like, because that makes me look and I want other people to think a thing about me because of the car I drive. Right. But when I was doing all this dismantling, I was like, honestly, low key, my essential self drives a Subaru.
Mm. Practical, gets you there,
Practical, gets you
space.
there, room for like camping
Yeah,
equipment and
yeah.
surfboards and stuff. Um, and so again, you can have a car in your shopping cart. I am not my, but the thing is, I am not my Subaru either, right? Like I have to always remember, right? Or now I have a Jeep. I am not my blue Jeep. So it's just really interesting. You want to be intentional and you want to make sure that you don't put people in your shopping cart. You don't want to put
Mm.
expectations in your shopping cart because here's the other thing. And this is where we get into that grind. If we think X amount of money in our investment portfolio or in our bank account is in our shopping cart and that makes us good enough, what are you going to want to do? You're going to be obsessed to get more because then
Mm.
I'm more good. I'm more enough. I'm more, right? I need
Okay.
nicer clothes. I need more, right? So we want to make sure that we're really conscious about what we're making that mean and adjust. along the way, because it's
Mm.
kind of phenomenal when you just go, whoa, why was I doing that?
Mm. You also the term it's I don't know, it has relationship, but the term I like the concept of a backup life.
Yeah, well, so most of us are living a backup life. Like, how many people do you talk to and they're like, one day when
Right.
I retire, I'm gonna blah, blah, blah,
Mm,
blah.
mm,
And you're
mm,
like,
mm.
oh, but this doesn't count. So when
Practice, yeah.
you have your focus so far forward, imagine you're on like a road and you got a spotlight, right? And all you're seeing is what's in front of you. It's massive spotlight. It's in the future. This is like the one day life you're going to have, right? Um First of all, you're shitting on your now. So in
Yeah.
order, because the spot that you're shining the light from is very small, so it's constricted. You're not even there. You're not looking at what is. And you are assuming that you will then start to be happy or fulfilled enough when you get there. Well, what I've told you so far is that who knows? Right? And you probably know that because people can't predict their happiness. So people just get paralyzed and do nothing.
Mhm, mhm.
But the bottom line is most people are making their now life their backup life, thinking that when they win, whatever that is, then they'll be happy.
Mhm. So you now help mostly women, midlife women, with expanding their life, with soul mapping and dating as well. What's some of the common issues that you see with a lot of women in their midlife age?
Well, I think so. So women that are single have a lot of fears around recreating their old relationships or their old life, and so if they
Ah.
had negative relationships, they're kind of terrified to design something that has a man in it. Um, on the
Hmm.
flip side of that is, um, or part of that is, they have a dude in their shopping cart of some fantasy guy, right? Like he's got to drive a Porsche, he's got to, have 5 million in the bank, he's
Mhm.
got to have,
6 feet
this
tall.
6
Yeah.
feet tall, where they say six pack, 6 feet, six
Yeah.
figures. Um, right. And so when you think about like, why do you need those things? Oh, well, because that will make me right, that more, it's the more,
Mm.
right? And so one of the things that I really help women do when I'm working on the dating part of their life reinvention is really looking at who is your ideal partner, not based on characteristics or ego,
Mm.
but based on values. 5 fights you're never going to have because you have shared values, right? Because you're going to fight, you're going to
Right.
argue. The Gottman Institute says 69% of all couples have perpetual arguments over and over again about the same things,
Huh.
right? You're going to always be working on those. But you want to have like at least 5 things that you're not. Um, and most people put, and I'll just be really honest, really dumb shit in there before
Really?
I work with them. Oh my God. Yeah.
Like
Besides the six pack, six figures, 6 foot.
Capricorn?
Well, yeah, Capricorn, but also like I had someone, and I love this woman because now she's married. I helped her to someone really
Good for
great.
you.
When she first came to me, she was like, he needs to read books like this certain type, and he needs to know how to set a formal English table.
It's pretty specific.
I'm like, why? um, uh, there's a lot of stuff around uh, what zip code they live in. I had a client once who lived in Los Angeles, which is a very large
Yes.
area with a lot of zip codes. And she was
Yes.
like, there is an 818, the Valley. No, not doing it. I was like, that's ridiculous. Well, I thought that's ridiculous. But then we worked through this process and she realized that was ridiculous. And then she let go of like a lot of things of what her type were. And now she too is in a long term committed relationship
Mm.
with a guy who was from the Valley.
Ah.
Uh, so, and just so many things that are on that list that are really just your defense mechanism.
Mm.
right? Because people put a lot of rules and barriers. They rule out before they rule in because it makes them feel safe. So it's really, really important to do this discovery and dismantling and really let go of the past relationships and really know who you are and have a track record of setting boundaries and self care. And once you know what you want, then you can more articulately look for it and ask questions. But most people just date the same way they think about that one day. Like, yeah, he'll be great, but I hope I don't do the same stuff I did before in relationship. And so if you
Mm.
don't know, if you don't have clarity, then you just will do nothing.
Do the dating apps help women in midlife?
I think you have to have a diversified dating portfolio. I think apps are great because it's number one, it's easy to fish. There's a lot of hoops you can get guys to jump through without being
Hmm.
in like that masculine energy. Just you set up boundaries, healthy boundaries. Um, you can practice going on dates and getting your girl on.
Hmm.
But also, it's great to be out in the wild and flirt with life and practice putting your phone down and practice chatting to people. And when you're living life on your terms and you're out there and you love your life and you're doing all those things, you may just well meet someone who is your person or knows your person or can introduce you to your person. But I think the apps are really good because it like turns on the energy.
What can men do better to help in the in this plight for women
Oh
midlife?
my gosh. I mean, honestly, I joke that like all you have to do is if your words and actions match and you follow up, you
Mm,
are setting yourself up to be 90% better than 100% of the men that are out there
mm,
dating because most of them just don't do it. They don't call when they're going to say, they don't text you back, they don't answer the phone, they don't show up, they ghost, whatever. So if you're just like on a basic level, do what you're going to say and have basic manners even if it's bad news, like, and you say like, oh, I had a good time on our date but I don't think we're a match, instead of saying, okay, I'll call you, you're going to be a better guy and you're going to meet a better woman.
mm.
The bar is pretty low, guys.
Seems simple.
It's so simple. It's so simple. um but I think the thing is that a lot of guys that are dating aren't really looking for a relationship. And if you're not, then you're not going to do any of those things.
Right.
Um, because you can. It's sort of like the veil of the apps is that you can do a bunch of behaviors that would never do if you like if it was your sister, if you were in person, if you were in public, you wouldn't do a lot of the behaviors
Mm,
that people do, and they hide behind. And we know this about trolling and bullying online and all those things because people hide behind the wall, and they don't treat people with the respect that they deserve. But the bottom line is, I always say to my clients, like, hallelujah, praise be. Like, let him show you who he is. He's not your
mm,
person, right? Like, you don't have to worry about it. The thing is, when I work with someone, I make sure that they're like rejection proof so that if someone does that, they don't make right the shopping cart, right? So if you have in your shopping cart, like, pick me, right? Like, I need to be picked to be enough, then you don't get picked, then you're going to be like, oh, I'm not enough. So and some people fill it with men just who are, I have women who just, when they came to me, they couldn't say no, right? So they just want anyone texting them. So they string guys along, right? Because
mm.
more is better, but they're not really the right person. And I think guys do this too, right? So we want to make sure that we're not rejection proof, or that we're rejection proof, that we don't take it personally. Um, that we're polite, and that it's a numbers game. But people make a lot of really huge mistakes dating. I think it's a
Mm,
tendency to rule out before you rule in. Like, a lot of my clients at the beginning are like, they go on a date and they're just finding 100 things wrong with this guy.
mm.
Men are doing that to women too, but then they're like, why is he judging me? I'm like, well, aren't you judging him? So
I was single for about a month, Marnie, and I went on the apps and I went on a lot of not a lot, but I went on a few dates
yeah.
and and always had a great time. Always had a great time. Most of them there just wasn't a connection,
Yep.
and so oftentimes we both agreed. a couple times, then it start to feel, well, maybe I'll be more attractive. Maybe something will be happen the next time. So we'll try
Yeah,
a second date,
that's
right?
great.
And so you go on. So the idea is just not to, you want to treat them as much as you have them treat you.
It's so basic, right? But yeah, and it does take a few days, to get to really know someone. Everyone's kind of maybe nervous on the first date.
Yeah.
Um, I think like, going out to dinner is probably the worst first date you can have.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
have to
yeah. Short.
chew and,
Yeah.
use a napkin. But that's what most people do. So I always say again, rule people in before that you rule them out and let them rule themselves out. It's pretty easy.
So you mentioned single women midlife have these issues. What about non-single women? What
Yeah,
common
that's
issues?
really interesting. Well, I think that most women that I work with that are in relationships in midlife have a lot of patterns in their relationship that they just sweep under the rug
Hmm.
to just get along and get through things, right? And they're not really speaking up for what they want or what they need because they don't want to ruffle feathers. They can deal with it. They're too tired. They're too. It's like it's too tired, too lazy to take care of stuff.
Mm.
We just get you blame someone, you get angry, then you're too tired and too lazy to actually deal with it because you just come home and forget about it and what's for dinner, right? And that creates like a lot of resentment. Um, and frustration, a lack of connection. And so it's really important for those women to really look at what do they actually need and to start to articulate those things and
Hmm.
advocate for themselves. I think sometimes you have to be relentless in making sure that your needs are getting met.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of women have again like bad patterns like or habits like talking to their partner about like, yeah, it really made me frustrated when you did this. And he's like, and we really need to talk about that. And he'll be like, yeah, okay, I can see that. And she's like, good. Ah, and they feel better. But nobody ever said, like, okay, great. So when do you want to talk about that?
Mm.
Or do you have 5 minutes tomorrow, before we go to bed to talk about that? And so there's just like this like getting the courage to speak up and say what you want. And then a guy being like, oh, okay, yeah. And then just not following up. What do you mean by that exactly? Is write
Mm.
that one down, everyone.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll do better next time. Okay, well, what do you mean by that exactly? How are you understanding what I'm saying?
Marty, I play golf with some men that have been married for 20, 25 years, and this kind of, peace at any price just seems so kind of like you're giving up. And don't you, wouldn't you rather talk and just resolve it? And it's easy for you to say, but it's peace at any
Well,
price,
yeah, I mean, I think you don't want to have peace at any price because you end up not being connected. I mean, one of
right?
the things so when I was living in LA with my husband and we had our, big house and we were just kind of doing our own things. It was easy, right? Like it was peace at any price. Like, he read the book Happy Wife, Happy Life, he
Mm,
got it.
mm,
And I was
mm,
just like, ugh, whatever. Um, but it was really interesting. So then when we went in the RV for a year, right? It was like, oh God, like this is there's no distractions, there's no other people, it's just us in this place. Wherever you go, there you are, right? You can change your
mm,
environment, but the patterns are still there. And it was really great because in that, when I realized sort of like I am capable and I realized that I could handle change and that I was worthy, I suddenly was like, okay, here's what hasn't been working for me. We need to change this. And it was the begin of an evolution of really improving our connection and our relationship because um, there was peace at the price of we have to like we're here together and we're doing this together, so how are we actually going to change it? Not
mm,
just peace like I'm just going to shut up because you can't. Well, at least we couldn't. I couldn't. He couldn't either
mm.
really.
So you're saying given the more space in your household, you can kinda live separately almost,
Well,
but
people do.
you're forced to interact when you're in 400 square feet.
Well, yeah, and you're like navigating through a lot of different situations. You have to make a lot of decisions together. You have to, you have to go through conflicts and help each other out, and then you're just driving, and that sucks
Mm,
to just not be talking. I mean, nobody wants that. Um, and so it was a really amazing experience to finally deal with things that we just been
mm,
like, my dad used to call it the pinch factor,
hmm,
like a little pinch here, a little pinch there, and then after so many years, you're carrying this big, heavy thing around,
mm,
right?
mm.
Um, and so the people that you're talking about, they have that thing and they're like, peace at any price. I'm just going to set it down. I'm not going to carry it around. I don't care how much shit's in there. I'm just not carrying it anymore. And that's not how I wanted to have a marriage. So, and we'd been together at that time, like maybe 12 years. And so we had some stake in it. We were married. But also I knew that, and this is something people can think about, um, you know, if you only had this many more years to live, like, is that how you want it to go down? And I knew that when I had like I even said this year for my 58th birthday, I was like, this year when I turn 58, I'm having a whole new set of problems. I know problems, challenges, growth areas, they're part of life, but I'm ready to evolve. I want some new stuff. I don't want to keep arguing about it. Like I want a new 69% of things to argue about. And so it's been great. It's been amazing.
Do you work with any men at all?
I used to work with men when I first started. Honestly, men are so much easier to coach.
Explain it, so that's why I'm trying to why?
Well, because men are more in their head, in a way that is, aligned. Like, women are in their head, but then their heart is saying something different.
I
But
see.
guys are just more simple in my experience. Like, they mean what they say what they mean. And so if I would say, like, I had a client, this guy Michael that I coached, who's very happily, engaged, and this was, like, a long, long time ago. And, I was like, "Okay, Michael, you're not gonna date for like 6 weeks." And instead of hemming and hawing, he was like, "Okay, well, what can I do? What should I do?" I was like, "You're gonna date yourself." He's like, "What does that look like?" I'm like, "Here's 5 examples." He's like, "Okay." He just did it, right? And a woman will be like, "What does that mean? How long do I have to not date? What will other people think?" Da, 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 right? Like it just gets, which is all
Interesting.
valid and fair.
Yes,
But
yes, yeah.
most men that I've worked with, they don't overthink those things. They just execute and they just do
Mm,
it. Um, and but that's so. But I meant to help women. I think women.
mm.
There's a lot of coaches for men.
Simply knowing that aspect of men and women, you would think it would be easier for us to get along with each other, we understand each other
Well,
better.
that's just, I mean, I always joke with my husband, like, literally, I'm so easy to make happy. Like, if there's a, like, if here's the manual, like,
Uh,
take out the garbage, put your phone down, ask me how I'm feeling. Like,
mm,
3 things. And I think that for men, and all people, like, certain things are just challenging. And so and I have a client this morning who's been with someone for 7 years, and, she was like, "I get triggered when you spend time doing these other things," because we talked about her shopping cart. "When you don't choose me, I make it mean I'm not enough." And she was like, but that's old. That's not real. And so what she realized is, because I'm in deficit of companionship because we haven't hung out enough,
mm,
when I see you doing other things, then I get triggered and I get resentful and
mm,
jealous. But really,
mm.
so she said, I just need to spend more time doing certain things together. And he was like, "Well, I didn't know that." And she was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I never really said it like that." And he said, "Be direct, give me directions. Like, that's easy to do." And so it was a big conversation. But I think women expect men to just know what they're thinking.
Right.
And men are just in their head, like, you know, I just saw a really funny thing about a man and a woman in Costco, and the woman's like, "Okay, we're getting out of here in like 17 minutes before the part, and I just need this and I just need that." And the guy, they show him, and he's like, "Wow, maybe we should get a TV. Wait, they have like croissants here, like just doing his life, right? And so I think that women don't understand that as much, that, when you ask a guy, what are you thinking about? And he says nothing, he's actually probably thinking about nothing. And we're not like that. So we need to
Uh,
communicate.
yeah, and understand each other better. I have friends that, talk to me and say, "Why doesn't he understand?" I say it so simply that he can't understand it any other way. Well, I said it like this, but still there's room for misinterpretation. I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't
It's funny.
get
Like
it.
my husband gets so annoyed, but we laugh. And I'm like, because I do basic communication, like coaching. I'm like,
Yeah.
so reflect back to me what you hear me saying.
Mm.
And he's like, oh, this is so annoying. But then he says it, and I'm like, yes, or like, no, that's not what I said. Or he'll say, like, honestly, I wasn't like listening. So that's a basic one. Reflect back to
Yes.
me what you heard me say. Not to be condescending, but just like, I want to, like, let's just make sure we're understanding each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So Marnie, I started my business in the '90s, and I was working way too hard. You're very familiar with this: 14, 16-hour days, not paying attention to my physical health, and playing less sports. And so I found myself at 340 pounds. And the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So I spent the next 6, 7 months. I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel. Right, I did this to myself. I can't. You know, spend the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. Problem with a lot of people losing weight is they look at it at
Yeah.
the finishing line, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's what do they call, the yo-yo diet, right? And it's not good for you. So when people want a quick answer, right? How'd you do it? What's your secret? My one word answer is always discipline. Right, I developed a routine. I was some mastery, some restraint, etc., some willpower. Just discipline is how I did it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Marni Battista.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's really interesting. I think that I am very blessed because discipline isn't that hard for me.
Hmm.
And I'm just going to say that because people ask me all the time, how do you do it all? Right. Um, so here's what I uncovered when I did the soul mapping around that. Because when I'm living my life and my core motivation is really coming from my soul, um, I'm excited about it because it's a 5.
Hmm.
Right? And so I want to do things. I don't commit to things unless I can figure out why and how it's aligned to like my core essence of who I am and what I am. Um, I wrote my book. People are like, "Oh, how would you discipline?" I was like, I was excited about it. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
like it made me feel good to tell my
Hmm.
story, like um I know that collaboration is really, really important for me in my soul map. So I just hired this person for like basically a year so we could talk about it every week. And like I had little deadlines and like, but that's part of my soul map. Like I like to collaborate even when I'm doing a solo thing. So when I set things up that are in alignment with that soul map, then it feels pretty easy to stay disciplined around those things. And um, when I have something that is something I should do, I just actually was doing my annual not annual, my half year reflection on my goals and my quarterly review and stuff. And there's some things in there that I didn't do. One of them is make videos every week teaching something, which is honestly pretty easy for me.
Yeah, you do
Um,
that.
yeah, I could totally do that, right? And I was like
Yeah.
thinking, why didn't I do it? And I know the answer because of my soul map. I love collaboration and engagement. And when I put stuff out there and I get crickets, I don't have feedback. There's no
Uh,
conversation. It's not that I need comments for engagement for my ego. Like, I literally don't give a shit about that. If there was one person who watched every video and was like, I love this and I have a question about that, I'd be like, oh, I better make another video for that one person. Right. But
mm,
when I don't know the feed, and by the way, I've had people write me and be like, I loved your video. So I know people do watch them. They just not
Mm.
getting any engagement. And so I realized like, I need to like, if I'm going to do this, I need to figure out like how to create engagement around it, how to make it easy to engage, to figure out some sort of thing where I'm having a collaboration and a conversation. Um, because if I don't do something, there's a reason why. And my job is to figure it out. It's either like a psychological issue, a technical issue, um, or a circumstantial issue. And there were no circumstances. There was no tech. I got the app and I thought it was so cool the way it worked and it's easy.
Mm.
So it was psychological. It was like, it's not in alignment with soul map. So I just got to make an adjustment or let it go. Maybe I don't need to even do that because someone
Hmm.
told me I need to do it. Do I need to do it? I don't know. Let's see.
Marnie, your statement of discipline comes easily. So focus, control, routine, even as a child, this came naturally to you?
Um, yes, but my motivation then was probably like to get the cookie sometimes,
Ah.
you know?
Regardless, it was still there though.
Yeah, it was still there. But I feel really when I'm like I can be a dog with a bone,
I see.
but also again I have to be in love with it. Like I've been
Mm.
wanting to write a book since I was like a kid, a traditionally published book. Like it's taken like 15 years, right?
Yeah.
I just kept working on it. Working out, I had an eating disorder in my like 20s. I was like a compulsive eater, a binge exerciser. I had to figure that out and figure out how to be healthy, right? And how do I express? And this is really big, came to me in the RV and all of that, and thinking about like, I just need my body. And after my ski accident, I just need my body to do fun shit so that I can express myself. And that way I define that is I want to be able to do anything and say yes to anything within reason and not have to like be like, I can't do that.
Hmm.
So like I decided I just want to run as 10K like a month ago. And I walked a 10K. Yesterday I was like, there's an open water swim at this lake. That sounds fun. Could I do the whole thing? No, I just did half of it, but I was like, I did it. Right. And I'm like, because I love to move my body. So it's less than like, oh God, I need to work out. I'm like, I just want to be able to do stuff. And now I set it up to where I'm doing it in nature, which is way more fun than the gym. So again, it's just about, I hate to keep going back, but that soul map is a really big part of creating your why, takes you out of procrastination, overwhelm, and into implementation and excitement.
Hmm. What motivates you, Marnie?
Um, Knowing that I help somebody, like when they
Mm.
have a big breakthrough, I feel like it's it makes me feel so happy for them.
Yeah.
Like when they see their dreams come true. I have 3 clients that worked with me maybe like 7, 8 years ago for a bunch of years. And they became really close friends. And they all happened to be in San Diego the other day. And they went out to dinner and they sent me a picture with their hands of all their wedding rings. And they're like, who would have ever thought we'd be 3 old married ladies, da da da. And I was like, that's cool, right? Like, that's motivating. That makes me want to like
Hmm.
get up in the morning and think of a new idea and have a conversation about how I can help someone and make some videos and but it has to really be from that place of like my purpose and my why. Otherwise, I can't do it anymore.
Seeing a friend or colleague success and knowing you had some level of responsibility, even if it's less than 1%, is just so rewarding.
Yeah, it's so rewarding and it just that's why I'm here. I'm here to make a difference in the lives of other people in a positive way and to have fun and be playful along the way. Cuz we need to play more and be
Yeah, we
silly
do.
and
Yeah, life can be too serious. Yeah,
yeah.
certainly there's time to to have a laugh. So, giving that motivation, how do you measure success?
Oh my gosh, we opened up a whole other can of worms. So part of when I broke those 7 bones in my sacrum. My dad had died about 6 or 8 months before. And I'm Jewish, I'd gone to these high holiday services, and the sermon was about these 7 spiritual questions that you get asked. It's in the Old Testament, that you get asked at the gates of heaven about, did you live a meaningful life? And my dad had died. And I remember thinking, like, because he was mumbling about credit cards and money and stuff, like, at the end of his life. And I was
Yeah.
just like, really? That he was such a great guy. Like, why are you worried about that? Um, and so I started thinking about these questions, and I was like, wow, according to this, my dad totally lived a meaningful life. Well, in the end, that moment came to me, and I thought, seven broken, 7 fractures, 7 questions. I'm
Huh.
gonna when I start to reinvent my life, I'm gonna use these questions as the metric of what makes a life successful. And so in my book, I talk about these 7 questions, or the 7 questions to help you design a meaningful life using this life design process. And so they don't say, the first question is, um,
Did you seek wisdom?
yeah, exactly. Right. And it doesn't say, are you really smart? Did you go to
Right.
Harvard? Did you, right? It's not, how much money did you make? Like, none of that. Um, I interviewed Rabbi Steve Leader, who wrote a bunch of great books about a lot of different things. And he said he'd been at the bedside of 1,000 deaths as a rabbi. And he said, one person said they wish they would have worked more.
Mm. I heard you say that the Old Testament has a bad publicist.
Well, I was
That's
saying, I
of
was saying
course.
that I was saying the 7 questions had a bad publicist,
I
and
know
the
what you
10 Commandments had a very good publicist.
it's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you seek wisdom? Were you hopeful? Were you true to your most authentic and essential self? These are all covered in your book.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And once you start thinking about success in that way, um, this is a life of meaning. This is a life well lived. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to be creative or have a business or make money, because, that's important, but you just want to do it in a way that's fulfilling your soul's purpose. And that allows you to answer that question. Yeah, I was being me.
Very true. And all the videos I watch of you, your social media, you are you, Marni Battista. That is 100% true.
Thank
I
you.
thank you so much for your time today. I was really looking forward to this. Anybody listening, how can they get in touch with you?
They can go to the Institute for Living Courageously.com, which is the largest URL on the planet
It's
Earth.
long.
Institute for Living Courageously.com, or you can email me today, the way we have it set up, at VIP at datingwithdignity.com.
And of course, you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, TikTok videos, your podcast, of course, you've been around for a long time. You got many, many episodes. You interview really cool people there, LinkedIn, and your books on Amazon. Make sure to put it all in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, Marni. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about your soul map.
Ah, very good. You be well.
All right. Mwah. Thanks, Joey.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.